Alright, is this working? What's going on here? There it goes. Sounds okay. Yeah. Alright, let's review yesterday's nonsense. So let's see here. See Rays out of second position. This is super early in this tournament. You can see the average stack is, it's about 2x, so I guess it's about an hour in, because I think you start with 10k in this one. Comes around, we go check, check. Obviously, I'm playing the hand a little weaker because it's out of position. This bet is one of those ones that kind of gave up the ghost, where it wasn't standard, but it wasn't protective. Like, you're betting into two players here. If you had something like an overpair, you would bet a little more. If you just want to make a standard C bet with a good quality hand, like, ace king, ace queen, you would bet a third pot. This is more than that. This is kind of like, this is almost like a half pot bet because there's three players instead of just two. This kind of plays like a half pot bet, which typically means nothing. So goes to fold, and I decide to go ahead and float it because I don't really feel like I'm up against anything definitively dangerous. Hit the jack on the turn, probably the best card for me. Player now bets, and now we are at just about a little better than a half pot bet. This should be a value bet, but it's really just nothing. So in game, I ended up saying I think I just want to call and let this guy continue to bluff. I'm not really sure where he's at, but I don't think he has too many outs. Check the river, and the dude bets 49 blinds into a pot of 28. Didn't take me long to figure this one out. When the bets don't make sense, it's nothing. So went ahead and called it with second pair and busted the busted draw. And that's the thing, is that the whole routing of the hand, like every bet this guy made zero sense. Like, there was no reason to do it. He just didn't know what to do. And the truth of the matter is, if he was just a little bit more, whatever with it, he would realize a three-way pot, if you flop this, you flop your best draw. Why are you betting it? You're just begging to get bet off the draw. Like, if, I'm in the blind, I can have top pair, I'm going to check raise you and then bet the turn, and you're just going to be just all kinds of trouble. But even if I don't, now you have to go bet, bet, bet. And his bet on the river, like, if he just bets like 20 blinds, I can fold. But when he bets 50, it's like, you're just so telling me that you either have the nuts or nothing. And the nuts in this scenario conceivably is a set. And nobody bets the way he bets with a set. So unless he hit exactly, because if he had ace king, he wouldn't have bet the river. That's the thing. You would have showdown value, be worried about getting beat by somebody who just called you the whole way. Because I could easily have 8-10, I could easily have two pair, all that stuff. So this betting scheme just made no sense. So easy pick off. Ace 5 isn't too exciting, but I just wanted to point it out. Defend in the blind, goes check, check. Turn comes off. Player bets 1/3 pot. You're on the turn. If you want to represent this card, you have to make a turn bet. Your flop bet is a third pot. Your turn bet should be about 2/3. If he bets 4 blinds here, I just fold. But obviously he didn't have anything, so I called. The river goes check, check. And I said in game, ace high is going to be good enough here a lot of the time. So this is just a good, like, this is no real attempt to win the hand. Like, if you're going to raise this, when this flop comes off, you kind of want to just keep betting, because I'm usually defending with the big cards, So this board is usually better for the initial raiser because you can have all the pairs. You can also have all the ace kings and stuff, and I can usually have just, broadways that aren't good enough to 3-bet, like, king 10 suited, king jack offsuit. Even that's a little tight. King jack offsuit can even 3-bet sometimes, but we're super deep, so I just think it's just poorly played. Queens in the big. This was an interesting one because I'm trying to get all the money, so what I ended up doing here was over raising. Normally a 3-bet from here would be about 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 or 10 if you were saying, you're out of position. But I decided to go bigger on this one because I wanted to commit this player. I felt like he played too many hands. These stats aren't accurate just because it's coming from the last hand. But yeah, I don't. He was just too involved, and he had kind of thrown away a bunch of chips recently, and it just kind of seemed like he didn't know how to fold. So I figured I would just push him to the point where he would play a subpar hand too strongly. So by making it 12 blinds, I'm basically telling him, you're going to play for all your money because he's putting in a third of his stack pretty much pre-flop, a little bit less than that. He decides to go ahead and jam back, and I call it, and the betting worked pretty damn well because ace-jack suited, I think if I make it less, I think if I make it like 8 or 9 pre-flop, I think he actually can just call. But when you make the bet bigger, he's sitting there faced with the fact that he has to call or fold, or he has to fold or jam. I think that's important to do with your premium hands here, so you make sure you get all the money in when you're way ahead. King, queen suited, so you raise and a call. I go ahead and bet. I want to bet big here, obviously, because I'm out of position. And get called, which is interesting from the initial raiser. And this one was a little tougher to figure out. So he checks, and I'm sorry, I go ahead and lead right at it, right? And this is just a third pot standard bet. Now I have to keep an eye on his stack, right? If I bet too much here, he's just going to be committed way too easily. So we want to give him a chance to make a mistake. So I want to fire multiple streets, but I can't go big because I have to leave him something to fold with. If I make it 16 blinds and he's just got ace 10, he's never going to fold here, right? So he calls. Turn comes off a 6. I took a couple extra seconds and then checked here. He checks back, and it's like, if you have an ace here, you kind of just get it in, but he checks back, and the river comes off, and I was thinking, what realistically should I do here? And in game, I kind of theorized this might be a pair, and it could even be a pair as good as kings or queens because of this ace being on the board. This is kind of how I would play it with kings if I had elected to just call pre-flop. Now, he could have queens, he could have tens, he could have nines, sure. All those hands kind of make more sense. Although I'm usually 3-betting the queens, or 4-betting the queens, but this could easily be kings, and it just came down to realizing that fact that if he had an ace, we would have gotten it on the turn. That was really what mattered. So the only real hand I'm kind of worried about is pocket jacks, and when you're only worried about one combination of hands, you should probably just go for the bluff. So I just jammed it in 1-to-1 stack to pot ratio, but obviously he's got way less, and he folds. And this is a good 2-street bluff that actually made me more money than if I tried to just kill it on the flop. Oh, this is a fun... This 6 max is the wildest tournament in the thing, and it was so much fun yesterday because of specifically the hands like this. So this player goes all in, and player on the button, who is a pretty wild guy. You can see he's playing 69-31. These stats actually got higher. He ended up playing like 75-30. He was just playing almost every hand. He goes ahead and calls, and facing this out of the blind here, I realized how good this situation is for me. So I thought about it, and I was like, well, I could 3-bet, but then I'm putting in like 20-ish blinds or so. I mean, I've only got 48 here, so rip a dip. And this is the exact situation that in yesterday's tournament masterclass section, Jonathan Little was talking about. There's situations where you're going to jam, between 35 and 60 blinds in that blind range. There are a lot of situations where you're going to jam that many blinds, and it makes sense. This is one of them because there's already so much in the pot that if this guy just folds, I get to take a shot at this guy for 3-1 on my money. But when he does something insane, like call with ace-4, like then I just get super stacked up, and this ended up obviously making me a really great amount of chips. Played a lot of hands versus this guy. He would end up flopping, making something because people weren't being aggressive enough pre-flop with him and ISOing him, and he would make something, and then people would get passive, and he was always bluffing. So he's one of those players that's great to have on your right. Let's see here. We're going to play another one with him. He limps. This guy limps. I decide to make it 5.5. Obviously, small blind with king, queen. Folds, comes back to him. He does call. This player calls. Flop is pretty good for me, although he can have anything. I'm not really even concerned about this guy because he's going to tell me what's up with his hand. I decide to go ahead and check it because in the instances that I'm ahead, I want to give this player an opportunity to bluff. Goes check around, and I decide to now bet the turn, and you see my turn bet, 2/3 pot. If, you know, this is what you do. This is a turn bet. A turn bet is not 1/3 pot here. If I bet 1/3 pot here, these players are going to level themselves into thinking I have something great, like a jack or ace king or aces or something like that. You bet 2/3 pot, this is the standard. It is very difficult for them to understand what's going on. So doing it with a value hand is super strong here. I do get called, and it folds to the river. I decide to check the river for two reasons. One, I felt like his bet would give me enough information to know whether or not I should call or fold. And two, there was a slight chance I was beat, so I wanted to see that bet first. So, plus, if he's going to bluff, I have to give him a chance, right? If I just bet the river here and he's got a missed draw, he's not going to pay me, right? So I check, and the player bets the full pot. And I had to go back and in-game think about the hand, and I realized he didn't raise pre-flop. And here's the thing, he was one of those players who plays a lot of hands, but when he raised, he had the better hands. So it was very obvious. So he can't really have ace-queen. It takes ace-jack out of the equation. Usually it takes king-jack out of the equation. He could have jack-10, sure, but then again, we're getting into very specific territory. Pocket eights, I guess, but I honestly think he raises those. So I'm really not worried about too much. The only real hands I was worried about were queen 9 and a jack, right? But even queen 9, I seriously don't even know if he's going to play queen 9 offsuit. He might, but I just figured out that really the only hand that I have to be worried about is queen 9, and there just aren't that many combinations of that hand to make me fold top pair here, especially when I'm holding a queen, right? Like if he only plays the suited queen 9, then there's only 3 combinations of that left. So obviously this is just another one where somebody made a stupidly insane large bet on the river, and it makes it much easier to call. So this one took me a few extra seconds, but I did end up calling it, and obviously, and he just showed me the ace-5. And it's hilarious because he floated this turn with literally 3 outs. And the funny part is, if I had ace-king and an ace had hit the river, I guarantee you I would have been able to bet it and get super paid. I probably would have jammed all in and gotten super paid because of that. But it was actually good that this player didn't go out because he keeps building chips and just giving them to me, which is what you want. Pocket kings, and he did build up after that. It gets kind of hilarious. Pocket kings out of first, I get 3-bet. This was the $22 flight to the 100K. And I thought about it, and this player's on a weirdish stack of 42 blinds to start the hand. I could 3-bet, or I could 4-bet for sure. But then again, if you look at the stack sizes, my 4-bet's going to be like 18 or 20. That kind of commits him to the pot. There are some players who can fold a lot of things for a 4-bet that's not their whole stack. So I decided the best way to look weak is just to jam all in. I'm basically representing pocket jacks or ace-king here. Is basically my move. I could have queens, I guess. My opponent did think for a good long time and then call me. And, you know, he had pocket queens and hit a 2-outer. What are you going to do? But we got all the money in, and this was a great pot. At that point, where is it? Show chips in big blind. There we go. At that point, 300,000, more than double the average, would have been huge. But of course I lost it. So what are you going to do? Nothing you can do. Where is it? There it is. Kings again. It's another fun one. So I raised to 2. We only have 20 blinds. It's going to be kind of hard to get it in with just the big blind. He checks, and I decide to go ahead and bet super small. You see this improper bet sizing? Like a standard c-bet here would have been a little bit bigger, but I decided to go very small because I'm trying to bait this player, and he does jam all in, and this is hilarious. This is never a hand that beats an overpair here. The only hand this usually is something like 6-5 or 6-3 or 4-3 or 4-5, like combo draws. But one pair, like just always putting people on ace-king is the thing. You'll see this a lot. Players love to put other players on ace-king and think, oh, when I have the 4, I just have him nutted. No, because I don't bet ace-king that way. I'm going to bet ace-king bigger and then jam the turn, and then what are you going to do with your 4? This is a fun one. So our friend here, you can see this is the same guy, 69-31. He's got 56 blinds now, and this is, at a different stage of the tournament. We go ahead and make it 2.5 blinds. Goes around to him. He calls, and I flop the Nizzly Bizzly, the effective nuts. He checks. I do decide to bet right at this because of the player I'm up against. One, I need to start building the pot. That's A, number one. And two, if he's got a draw, he's going to play it aggressively, typically, this kind of player. He does raise, but it is a small raise, and this is fun. Because when you see players do this small raise on a really dangerous board, what they're attempting to do is buy the river, right? They're attempting to see the whole board here by backing you off. So like if this guy has the ace of diamonds in his hand and I have, top pair, how likely am I to re-raise this? Personally, I'm going to call and wait to see on the turn what I know is going to happen, where he checks. A lot of players make the mistake here of checking back. This is a draw all day. And if you want to get the money in, there's one way to do it right now. But if I had ace-jack here, I would absolutely just bet huge and force him to either draw super improperly or fold the hand. As it was, I went ahead and bet 2/3 pot because I have no fear of anything. This player now makes the same raise, right? He's representing the fuck out of this flush, but he just never has it. This is always, always, always the draw. Always. The fact that he did this is kind of the most ludicrous thing I've ever seen. Like, it kind of makes me think that I could have actually just jammed all the chips in on the flop and gotten him to pay me 60 blinds. And of course, we just go ahead and jam all the chips in. He snap calls it. River comes off clean, and my man has king 9. Literally could have been drawing dead. Like, if I have the ace of diamonds in my hand, like, what can you beat me with? If I have the ace-king offsuit with the ace of diamonds in my hand, you're drawing to a 9. Like, it's hilarious. But yeah, I did end up skinning the sheep, as they say. And he went out. But I got almost all this stack I got from him. And that stack was huge for me. Oh, I missed one. Ace-king. I go ahead and raise. I get 3-bet. And called again. This player has 30 blinds, 56, 11. I think this is a pretty easy all-in, especially in a 6-handed tournament. One of these 30 big blind stacks can go, that's fine. Player calls, and the other player calls, which kind of is funny to me. And the board runs out, and I miss. 10-10 versus ace-10. I think I marked this one. Let me look at my marker. Yeah, I marked this one because I wanted to run the numbers. There's no reason to. This is absolutely perfect. It's fine. Pocket 10s is a standard 3-bet. Maybe he 3-bet small because he only had like 30 blinds left. Maybe he could have this could have been a situation for him where he just rips it all in pre instead of going to the 3-bet. Because what if I call? You know what I'm saying? If I call and a card jack or higher comes out, you're just fucked. So maybe you just want to get in the 30 blinds immediately. But yeah, this is fine. I'm not even going to do the math on this one. I was feeling very depressed yesterday about my results lately. This is one I wanted to run the numbers on. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to construct a range based on GTO and see if I'm supposed to do what I did. This is basically my default thing that I'll do. So what we're looking at is I raised out of first. Player in the hijack jams for 23 big blinds, right? So you go to the tools section here. Tournament GT off pro charts. What does that say? Cut off hijack, right? Position is the hijack. Blinds, let's give them 25. That's fine. It's between 20 and 25. Versus a raise from the opponent's position under the gun. Let's take a look at his jamming range. It isn't much. Versus a proper jamming range, it really isn't much. there's many more calls. Now he has 23 blinds. What is it at 20? All right, at 20, it's more, I think, realistic. Yeah. Yeah. I think in this tournament in particular, I think 20 big blinds is more realistic. But it's still not great for me. But so now we're going to bring up Equilab. And I'm going to input this range. Let's see. Anything over 50%, I'm going to count as a jam. So Ace King suited, Ace King off, King Queen suited, King Jack suited, Queen Jack suited, Ace Queen off, Jacks, 10s, 9s. Is that it? It's a pretty tight range. Did I get Queen Jack suited in there? Ah, oh, damn it. Where the hell is it? Oh, really? Dude. I don't know why that just went away. That was weird. Alright, well, do it again. Ace King suited, Ace King off. Jacks, 10s, 9s. I'm going to see if I can remember it. Queen Jack, not Queen Queen. King Queen suited, King Jack suited. Ace Queen off? Was that what it was? Yeah, Ace Queen off, Ace King off, Ace King suited, Queen Jack, King Jack, King Queen. Hey, look at that. I got it right. Okay, so we're going to apply this and then run my hand. King Queen suited verse it and see. Yeah, we're so we need about 45% equity versus this range. We have 42%. So let's see if the price is right. I mean, I know it is, but this is the stuff that's frustrating because I'm absolutely correct and I still lost. So there's his 23 in the middle plus my 2 plus 1 for the big blind plus 0.5 for the small blind plus we'll say 1 for the antes. 27.5 cost me 21 to call it. So if we add, what did I say? We're adding 21 plus 21. Oh, god damn it. What am I talking about? 23 times 2 plus the blinds and antes. That's fine. All right. 48.5 cost me 21 to call. Divided by 21. 2.3 to 1. So we go 1 divided by 2.3. 43.44% is my equity. By the books, I have 42.37%. I have enough. It's close, but I have enough, and I knew it in game, and that's the thing to be proud of. That I did evaluate this correctly, and folding this hand here would have been disastrous because I needed to get back in this tournament. As you can see, I only had 44,000 chips. The average is 74. Not that that's a huge deal, but it definitely is a factor. So, yeah. And I ended up making the trip kings, but I was versus the ace-queen. When I say I lost, I mean that in this particular hand, I was up against the range. It was too wide, and you can see that hand is in the range. But yeah, so I made the right decision at the time. I like it. Even though I was behind, it was still the right decision. See raise on the button. This player raising on the button to 2.6. Here's the funny part. If he had just made it 2 blinds, I would have folded. But when he makes it 2.6, this is where he's trying to make his hand seem stronger than it is. And here's the case. If you really had a strong hand that you wanted to look weak and get the money in, you would just jam pre-flop. So I thought this was a funny instance where I just ripped on this guy immediately, and he folded. And I can absolutely do that with the 10 jack. The thing is, if I had 12 blinds in the big blind and somebody opened on the button and I had 10 jack, the question is, would I jam? The answer there is yes. So therefore, this jam works because he's the effective stack. Ace 10 offsuit. See an open to 2 big blinds. I call. Flop comes off. Player bets super micro. This is 1/4 pot. Doesn't mean anything. So we go ahead and just check raise right here. This one I'm kind of running the numbers on because I'm trying to figure out if I should have raised that. I feel like I should. Player now checks the turn. There's really very few hands that can check this turn here. With 12 blinds behind, 16 in the middle, like what hands realistically should be checking this turn? Not many. I decided to check back just in case I was up against some weird backdoor draw at this point. The river comes off a 5 and the player checks again. This is a 90% success thing right here that I'm just about to show you. I go ahead and jam all in. Pretty easy. The player thinks for a fair amount of time and then decides to go ahead and call. And rolled over King Jack offsuit. And to me, this was an example of playing a very high percentage move and just running into the minimum scenario. Like, he even almost folded the King Jack. I think the only reason why he didn't was because he realized there was no raise pre-flop, so I'm not likely to have an overpair. But I could easily, for me, have ace-jack here. I don't have to 3-bet the ace-jack versus this player and race for 20 blinds. I don't need to do that. I think this is one where his opening range, this was near the bottom of his, and this was near the top of my calling range. So those two things kind of intersected. I thought a lot about this hand yesterday after I went off and ran some, made the, did the little calculator thing and kind of figured it out and realized that I really didn't do anything wrong here. This is just a scenario where I ran into the minimum versus minimum. Like, he had the minimum hand he should be calling with, and he almost didn't call. That's the funny part. He really took a long time. And so I think it was very on the cusp. What's up, brother? Is it a play day for you later? Yeah, Chuck, I'm going to be playing later today. I'm probably just going to be sticking with MTTs, but I was thinking maybe I'll play some cash today. I'm kind of beat up right now. my past 2 weeks have been pretty results depressing, and it takes a while for results to get to me anymore. Like, you just try to make the best decisions and go from there. But when you're so short on bankroll and you kind of need the money, it's very hard to not let the results affect you. So I was thinking maybe I don't play anything too emotionally investing today. I don't want to play the flights, to the 100K, because busting another one of those would really upset me. Love watching me play alongside my grind. Oh, nice. Yeah, so I was thinking some cash. Just something not emotionally invested. Maybe some sit and goes, maybe some shorter form tournaments, but I feel like it's a cash day. You kind of have to go with it when you feel certain ways. Like, my mother is a painter, and she's an artist in a lot of senses, but one of her main disciplines is painting, and she told me years ago that she used to beat herself up when she wasn't painting because she knew she had to improve she had to paint to use these techniques to improve. And this was when I was on a downswing and I just didn't feel like playing, right? And she said, but she realized that she needed to have inspiration. So what she would do is she would go out in the world and, talk to people and just go to the store, get some neurons firing in her brain, and then she would come back, and in the context of whatever technique she wanted to use, she would then try to paint. And she said it just allowed her to be kind of reinvigorated and inspired. And she said, what you're doing with poker, this is years ago too, is not just, she's like, you call it a math problem, but it's not just a math problem. There's a lot of creativity there. There's a lot of emotional investment there. And there's, a little bit of art to it, and any game played amazingly at its core, I believe, contains art. Just the way you construct your philosophies and strategies, And she said, so like any other artist, you have to be inspired. So you might not need to play today and play on the days that you don't feel inspired to do so. And I really took that to heart. And I tried not to play on days where I'm not excited to play. Like, just grinding for a living is very hard when you're just going through the same thing and it's like, well, maybe today I'll win 3 or 4 buy-ins. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very hard to stay focused. But that's why it's good to play tournaments and cash and things like Zoom and things like, you know, the jackpot tournaments and regular sit and goes and satellites. Like, if you look at them at all as different forms of poker, which they are, you know, same base game but different variants, then you can still stay inspired and stay passionate. And that's the only talent I've ever had for things that I loved, is preserving my passion for them. Like, I truly don't have any natural talent at all at anything I've ever done, but I've gotten very good at quite a few things because I love them so much and just really committed to the hard work. What time is it? It's Jesus Christ. Hang on a sec, guys. Wow. Courtney's really tired. I know you guys can hear that. But, oh well. Let's see. What should we do now? I wanted to go till like 1 o'clock or so. You know what? Let's do some quizzes. Here's a Jonathan Little quiz. Let's do that one. So I don't want to get into the tournament masterclass today. I'm feeling like I need a little break from it. I've done hours on it every day for the past like 10 days. So I'm going to clear my palate and do some quizzes. Let's see here. Let me fix the sound. Let's just do a JL one here.
Here we have Ace King of Clubs playing 700, 1400. One of these weird online blind levels. Should we fold, call, raise to 2,800, or raise to 3,200?
So, interesting. I like 2.5, which would be, what is that, 28 plus 7, 31. So I'm going to go 32, just because the players in the blinds actually are deeper stacked. So, like, yeah, I think it's okay to go bigger here, because if we get 3-bet, we'd rather just reduce the stack to pot ratio and get the money in.
This is a fine spot just to min raise. I'm okay with raising slightly bigger to 3,200. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I mean, this is one of these scenarios where we want to ask, like, what do the opponents do wrong, right? And in general, if the opponents call too often pre-flop against min raises and then check fold too often after the flop, I don't really care if they stick around with a bunch of nonsense, right, for a small raise. If they're going to call with that exact same range, though, and play equally poorly against a bigger raise, though, they would rather raise a little bit bigger because we just get more money in the pot that we get to steal later. As poker like ebbs and flows, I think you're going to find that some people play quite poorly against particular raise sizes, although playing online, very rarely you're going to know exactly what your opponent does wrong. So I just typically min raise in these spots, and I think it's fine. But if you want to make it 3,200, that's fine too. I wouldn't be making it much bigger than that, though. Flop comes 5-3-2. Opponent checks. Should we check, bet 2,200, bet 4,800, or bet 7,200?
We don't have a draw. We don't really have much. We kind of have our marginal made hand. So I think I want to check here because the ace high is going to be good enough on its own. And we really don't want to, we don't want to bet and get check raised, right? Because then, we have to give it up to, a pair of fives. Fuck that. I'm going to check.
This is a spot where I think we can go either way between betting and checking. If I am going to bet, I would bet small, typically. This is a scenario where I'm going to be betting a lot of my range, right? Like, any overpairs are going to want to bet. Any good hands, really, are going to want to bet. Any cards, they cannot win at the showdown, like Jack 10, are going to want to bet, because if you get a fold immediately, that's fine. If we are going to develop a checking range...
That's the thing. Jack 10's not good enough to win on its own, so you actually want to bluff more with it, rather than in this scenario where the ace-king's going to win a lot. You know, with no pair, ace-king's the nuts.
It's just going to be with our marginal made hands. I think ace-king is a very strong marginal made hand here. So if I am going to develop a checking range, I think this hand certainly can fit into it because I don't really want to bet this hand and get raised. That's usually what you want to ask yourself whenever you're trying to find the marginal hands that you would like to check. You want to ask, if I check this hand and get raised, if I bet this hand and get raised, is it terrible? And in this scenario, I think it is terrible. So I don't mind letting it go check. If I am going to bet, then I'm going to go small because you don't really need to give your opponent too poor or too great of... You don't mind giving your opponent good pot odds to stick around because whatever they have is in pretty bad shape anyway and is going to have a tough time realizing its equity if it's not already a pair or a draw. So like say they have 9-8 of clubs, they're just going to fold to any bet, right? We don't need to bet bigger because when we bet bigger, we just put more money in poorly against the hands that are going to stick around. And the hands that are going to stick around are in decent shape. We let it go check this time though. Turn is a 6 of hearts and the opponent bets almost pot. Should we fold, call, raise to 15,000, or raise to 22,000?
So this is interesting because the most likely scenario here is that our opponent has something good. I think in this one you can kind of count on the opponent having 2 pair. It doesn't have to be a straight, but it's definitely something good. So coming up with a bluff would take kind of a bit of creativity. So if I was going to bluff, I would be raising to 15,000 and then jamming on all heart rivers. It's very unlikely our opponent has a good flush right now because he is in the blind. But then again, we're kind of flying blind versus his range. So and plus, when we raise the turn to set that up, he may just jam. Like if he has a 4 here, he may just jam it, right? Especially if he has like the ace 4 offsuit with the ace of hearts in his hand. So I think I just let this one go. I think I just fold it. I just don't have enough hope anymore. When he leads big, it's kind of like I have something I'm protecting here. So I'm going to fold.
When I check back the flop, I plan on calling pretty much any turn besides exactly the hearts. I think the hearts are all pretty bad. If it's an ace or king of hearts, of course, I wouldn't fold. Even if it was an ace, I know the 4 is available. But if this is any other card that's not a heart, I typically continue against most turn bets, including even this big turn bet. Because you have to realize, when I let it go check on the flop, I have mostly like medium pairs, like ace 5 or ace 3.
Let's try to reload this page. Hang on. I want to see the score come up. Okay, this is the same one. Okay,
here we have ace.
I put in raise
This is a
to
fine
32.
spot, just a min raise.
I put in check the turn.
This is a spot where I think we can go either way between betting and checking. If I am going to bet, I would bet small, typically. This is a...
So I said fold.
When I check back the flop, I plan on calling pretty much any turn besides exactly the hearts. I think the hearts are all pretty bad. If it's an ace or king of hearts, of course, I wouldn't fold. Even if it was an ace, I know the 4 is available. But if this is any other card that's not a heart, I typically continue against most turn bets, including even this big turn bet. Because you have to realize, when I let it go check on the flop, I have mostly like medium pairs, like ace 5 or ace 3 or ace 2. And I'm going to have some ace king and ace queen type hands. So I don't think we want to fold the ace king immediately to a turn bet most of the time, but when we get this super nut low turn, for me, I think I do have to fold. Notice I do have lots of hands containing the ace of hearts here that are clearly never folding, so I think we're decently well protected to the point that we just let this one go. This is another example of a scenario, if you saw my previous quiz, where we just get a really, really, really bad card and face a bet. When you get a really, really bad card and face a bet, it's okay to get out of the way more often than not.
Good thing to remember. Yeah, let's do another one. I don't know who the next quiz is.
In this hand,
Ooh,
you're playing a
Sassanado.
$55 buy-in, $80,000 guaranteed tournament on a large site. You have 4-4 in the big blind. The cutoff is opened. The cutoff plays 27% of the hands and raises 18% of the time. Has been pretty aggressive post-flop. Small blind is a little bit more loose passive. You have 45,082 chips in the big blind at 275, 550 with an ante of 60 as far as blinds and antes. Pre-flop here, do you want to call, raise to 2,800, raise to 3,800, or raise to 4,800?
I'm going to preface this again. Every time I get an Assassinato quiz, I'm going to say he is insanely smart. maybe the move here. Wait a minute, let me think about this completely. So this player is so loose aggressive, and he plays very aggressively after the flop. And this player is more passive. So in that scenario, standard, I would want to 3-bet because this player is going to be strongest pre-flop. So when the flop hits, I can take away many flops from him. But this player being passive may be a factor. We don't want him to call and get there. But here's the problem with this hand. If I had king queen, that's 100% what I would do. Here's the problem with this hand. The hand is so good to flop multi-way that I think I like that best, because in the instances where I'm just defending my blind and I flop a 4, this player is going to bet. So I'm pretty much guaranteed my 10x expected value. So I'm just going to call. Maybe this is a mistake.
If you said 3-bet, that will make your c-bet work more, and it will give you a number of wins on very hit or miss boards, especially with the loose passive player calling in the small blind. It's very likely they'll miss a number of these boards. That being said, the initial player's raise pre-flop isn't extraordinarily large, which would normally lead us to 3-betting. So it's probably...
Because a larger bet means a weaker hand from a player who varies their bet size. You'll see players who are loose aggressive, or just loose in general, vary their raise size based on their hand. This being a standard raise, actually below standard to 2x, means he doesn't have a great hand. So we probably could have stole it, but we get paid more when he catches a slice and we make a set.
A little bit better to go with a call here. Now, for the rest of the hand, we will wait till the end of the hand to discuss all different reasons we make the decision. So we call here, and the board comes 3-5-9. Here, would you like to check? Would you like to bet 960? Would you like to bet 1,920? Or would you like to bet 2,880?
This is usually a great scenario for me out of position, where I'm out of position but in the middle. Like, so this player has to act before me and he has the most pressure on him behind. This player's in position. He's the most open. Personally, this is one where I like calling or checking and then calling a bet. And then usually this guy will fold, but even if he calls, we can actually continue. But if it goes check, 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 the turn I can make a small bet and usually take the pot down. So I like setting that up with a check.
We go ahead and check here, and the cutoff player bets 1,925 into 3,840. Here, would you like to fold, call, raise to 5,765, or raise to 7,765?
I think this is a great case for check raising. I think also because we have the 4s, we're not likely to be up against a draw like 4-6, ace-4, hands like that may come along. So I think we want to raise, and I think we don't need to go too crazy. I think 57 will do it. There's a market to be made for calling here and then letting the turn go check, check, and betting the river, but I think in this particular instance versus a very loose aggressive player, I'm going to raise.
We go ahead and call here.
All right.
The turn is the king of hearts. Here, would you like to check? Would you like to bet 2,614? Would you like to bet 4,307? Or would you like to bet 6,767?
So that king is precisely why I check the flop, or why I check raise the flop, because of that. But I'm going to go ahead and check. This player is going to bet.
We decide to check here, and he goes ahead and bets 3,850. Here, would you like to fold, call, raise to 8,725, or raise to 10,725?
So he's just betting half pot. I wouldn't play the hand this way, but Assassinato is very good at putting himself in difficult situations because he navigates them better than other people. So he's been in them hundreds of thousands of times, and he says he likes to create these situations. I'm just going to go with my answer. If I had played this hand in this manner, I would have folded because I'm looking for a check on the turn, and then I want to lead the river and steal the pot. So I'm folding now.
Okay, let's go through the entire hand. So pre-flop, we discussed our reasons for calling pre-flop. On this flop, this...
I just understood why he did what he did. I just understood it. Fuck. Damn it. I know what he's going to say. Oh, god damn it. He's going to say that we defended pre-flop, and then we just called the flop instead of check raising. Then when a scare card comes on the turn, our opponent is already representing nothing with his betting structure. So when he bets the turn, we can then check raise, and now we're representing a scarier scare card than him. We could definitely have king 9 when that king hits the turn. We could have 4-5. We could have 9-5. We could have all sets. We could have all hands like king queen, ace, king queen, or pocket nines, things like that. Fuck, that's why he's saying this is a flop float turn check raise to when the scare card comes out. So if any card jack or higher comes out on the turn, usually queen or higher is best, but jack or higher, like think about it, even this guy's sitting there with ace king or king queen. If we check call the flop, the turn comes off, the best card for him, the king, and then we check and he bets and we raise, how can he like his king now? Like, how can he like it? He's got to know in his own mind, he's gonna know, oh shit, my king's not great here, like, because nobody's gonna. Oh, that's so fucking smart. God damn it! This is why I got to take these quizzes, man, because different perspectives. I will be using this move today. This is so brilliant. Oh.
Is a larger bet, which is interesting because many people on such a hit or miss board tend to bet a little bit smaller if they really have something. It's possible he has an overpair and just doesn't want to see more overcards, but a set, things of that nature, even a good 9. Sometimes you see people bet a little bit smaller. It's interesting that it's just a straight half pot on such a hit or miss board. So we're going to take note of that. With the 4s, we don't want to donk lead on this flop because our hand... Typically, the good times to donk lead, just from a pure exploitative standpoint, is when your hand doesn't really work well as a check raise. It's a little too good to check fold, but not good enough to check call. Here, this hand is actually pretty good for a check call. You have a pair that's very likely to have the best hand. You have backdoor draws. Many times people will bet big here, and then they'll just give up because they're just taking the one shot on the very hit or miss board, and you can get to showdown quite cheaply. So we go ahead and just call here after this player is folded. And then on this turn, some guys like to turn their hands into a bluff here and lead on this turn. I find in smaller stakes, when people are confused, they end up just calling a lot. So since we're not really betting for value, we'd really like to avoid that. So we should just go ahead and check here. Now when he bets here again, and it's another sizable bet, this, again, little unlikely. You would think he would bet a little bit smaller with a set if he had hit on such a hit or miss board.
And bigger with a king. Because if we're on a draw, he wants to price us out. If we have 4-6, we're not priced out. If we have 6-7, we're not priced out because we can hit an 8 or a 4. You know what I'm saying? Like, plus the heart draw came in. If you have a king in your hand here, you'd want to bet 2/3 pot, not this half pot bullshit.
You do see that behavior a lot of the time. If he had a 9, he probably doesn't bet this big on the turn.
Just checks.
For value. And obviously if he has 6s, 7s, 8s, ace 5, 6 suited, you really don't expect this big bet because he's not getting value from a ton that's worse. If he bets substantially on this turn, and this is probably the bottom end of the substantial bets. So it's confusing why he would do that bet. The only hand that really makes sense is a king, which does make some sense. Like, okay, I have king, queen. I missed this flop, but I think nobody else hit it, so I'm going to bet a little sizable here. Get everybody to fold out just their riffraff, their gut shots, their ace highs and stuff, and maybe some of their 3s and whatnot. And then, okay,
Now, if you're going to commit to that move, that's where I like to bet 2/3 pot on the flop. When I take my one shots, I make sure that they're big so that people don't get to fill in the blanks with their own ideas. I want them to see what I'm saying and go, whoop, I'm out of here.
I hit this turn now, I really want to start cashing in, I'll start firing. The thing about that is, it's definitely possible. Like, ace king is definitely a really decent percentage of his range here. King queen somewhat, but it's harder to find guys in lower stakes games who will really value bet thinly. It's one of the most difficult things to teach when you're working with guys at low to mid stakes. Like, yes, you have king jack here. Yes, king jack is the nuts. Keep firing. There's a lot of times you'll be looking at a guy playing.
It's true. One thing I've been working on a lot, and it's especially in cash games, in the past like 2 or 3 months, has been making sure I always get my thin value bets in. When I conceivably have the best hand, I should just keep betting. Like, what am I afraid of? Like, if your hand is best, it's best. And with all the information, if you have, until somebody changes the script and raises you, keep betting your best hands for value. Like, that was a very hard concept for me to get.
And he'll check back king jack here, and you'll be like, what are you doing? You most likely have the best hand, right? And king 10 also gets checked back here a lot. Maybe not... You see smaller bets, or it gets checked back with the king 10, king jack, because what these guys are super worried about is getting bluffed off their hand. So you see a lot of, okay, I'll check back here with my 10s, my jacks, my queens, my king queen, my king jack, my king 10, my 9-10, my 9-8, my 8s, my 7s, my 6s, my ace 5. And when he fires the river, I'm just going to call. I'll let him bluff. I'll keep his range wide. And that's a fine way to play. The only problem is if you have a high aggression, come on, Alex. If you have a high aggression frequency post flop, but you are checking a lot of those pairs, your turn range becomes 9s, 5s, 3s on this board, and we find that unlikely because he didn't seem to want us to play on the flop. Or it's like king, queen, or ace, king, and the rest is just air. The rest is... It's a fantastic card for him to bluff. It is a good card for him to bluff. It is unlikely to be in our range because we probably didn't call out of the big blind to close the action with king 3 off or king 5 off nearly as much. But
funny side note, as someone who I've been told my whole life that I'm somewhere on the spectrum of autism, because of my predilection to numbers, and my dyslexia is very in line with people who favor numbers over words and things like that and everything else. And I've been told quite a few times from the way that I act and my perceptions of the world that I am definitely on the spectrum somewhere. I really don't want to get it tested. I'm 44 years old and I don't need another thing to concern myself with. But you can hear it when Assassinato talks. His brain is working so fast on one particular plane, being numbers, including the cards, which are versed in the numbers and based in a math-based form of the brain, that his auditory, his speaking, becomes muddled. And you see, it's not that he's confused, it's that he can't articulate the numbers in his head to turn into words. This is the problem that people have when they try to learn poker from a literal poker genius like Assassinato, where the genius knows what he knows, but he can't explain it. Assassinato's gotten very good at doing that because he's allowing himself to stammer through, and he's not embarrassed because he's confident in what he knows. He knows what he knows, and he wants to tell you. So luckily, he's at an age where he's built that confidence where he will just keep going and keep going and keep going and make a joke out of it and say, oh, come on, Alex, whatever. Like, he knows what he's doing is right, and if he can just get his point across, you'll get great benefit out of it. I really appreciate this guy, and if I ever meet him, I'm going to shake his fucking hand because of that. Because most people would just give up. They would have re-recorded this after they'd compiled their thoughts into a script, and it would be less authentic, and it wouldn't get the point across.
Stack size wise, he's really susceptible to a check raise. He can bet pretty flippantly on this turn, but if we check raise, he's really defending for his chips. Now, you might say, well, if it's so likely he's bluffing, why don't we let him fire on the river? That is A very good question. The reason for that being he probably doesn't realize how much equity he has right now. If he has like 7-8, he has significant equity versus our hand. If he has queen 10, if he has queen jack, if he has jack 10, if he has backdoor hearts, probably fire here all the time and probably fold to a sizable check raise. All of those hands have overcards and draws and tons of equity versus us. The vast majority of his range is just also like if he has just ace 8 and he's firing again, it's really unlikely he realizes how much equity he has here. And if we just get him to fold out all of those hands by turning our hand into a bluff, essentially when you turn your hand into a bluff here, a very, very good percentage of the time it's going to work. So we make it 10,725. That's very much like, okay, I'm setting this up for stacks on the turn. This looks a lot like a set, which is fairly unlikely for us to have. Likely we would have 3-bet 9s pre-flop, but we could also have king 9. We could also have king 5 suited, king 3 suited. Our range does have those applicable combos. And when you make it 10,007...
It's funny because king 5, if you switch the 5 and the king here, this is almost the same board where I had ace-king in the new Jedi Mind Trick. There's a hand where, towards the end of the thing, where I have ace-king, I raise, the big blind defends this big stack. There's a player in the middle, just like this. The flop comes off with nothing. I decide to go ahead and check the flop with the ace-king, and it checks around. The turn comes off a king, my best card, and the player in the blind bets right into me. And I can't really decide because he was on like 80 blinds. The rest of us were on like 40. I can't really decide yet if I'm bad or good yet. So I just call it. The other player folds. The river comes off and he bets big. And I'm like, or the other player had called it. The river comes off and he bets big. And I'm like, I think I have to fold here. Like, I think my one pair is never good here. So I fold. The other player calls. And the guy had king 5. In the big blind. He had made 2 pair on the turn and just began betting. And it was because he changed the script. Now, if I had bet the flop and he had called me, I would have been in the scenario that this player's in, where now when you bet the king and you get check raised, holy shit, are you actually ever good here? Like, and you can see when you have the ace king or you don't, how it's never a good call here on this turn if you only have one pair. Because you're versus the blind, there are so many 2-pair combos that are going to, check raise you here. Plus, let's say the river comes off. Let's say I do have just the 4-6 of hearts, right? Just a monster draw, or 6-7 of hearts or something. If the river comes off like anything other than an ace or a king, even if it's not a heart, and I jam on you, can you really call with one pair? No. So that's the whole point of this, is that you're thinking down the line. This is really a great hand. I love it.
725 here. You're making it 10,725 to win 22,265. So it looks like a really sizable raise, but this bet needs to work 48% of the time, which means if it works 50% of the time, you're making a profit. Now, obviously, we need more than that as a margin of error. So we're not just on razor thin margins here. We have some margin of error, and typically about 60, 70+% of the time here, you're just running into a double barrel that's just jackass. If he was betting to buy the showdown, he probably wouldn't bet this much. If he was betting a king jack, a king 10, I oftentimes don't see people bet this much because they want to leave themselves like, okay, if he check raises, it won't be that big. That way I can call, right? And what that means, for those reasons that we just discussed, it's far more likely he doesn't even have a value hand a third of the time here. He is mostly double barrel bluffing, knowing that when we check call on that flop, we most likely have a 9, a 5, or a 3. And all of those hands really do not like a king turn, and he might just be preparing to fire river. Now, if you want to call here and then call river and just take the risk that his significant equity gets there, that's fine too. I just thought, honestly, the actual play of the hand when he fired this turn, it hit me like a rock. He didn't have it, and I knew if I check raise, I would just take the pot right now, whereas I thought I was giving him a huge equity pull given how weak my hand is. So I decided to turn my hand into a bluff here, and he folded fairly quickly.
It's a really great play. I'll be using this today. I will be using this immediately. It's really a great play. It's a double float check raise. It's really not something that I thought I can integrate much outside of cash games, but in tournaments, I think it actually has a better success ratio. Cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream. I got to get to the store. I'm gonna try to get my third COVID vaccine today, and I'll be I'll be back later to play. I'm probably just gonna play cash today. My emotional investment is not at a surplus right now, so I think I'd like to just play some cash and keep it light. But we'll be playing for a good chunk of the day today. So I'll see you guys later. Have fun, and yeah, back in a bit.